SpongeBob has been around for over 25 years now, and it just keeps on getting renewed for more and more seasons while remaining very popular, which is really impressive in the cartoon industry where most cartoons seem to just come and go. But this also raises the question of just how much longer can it go on for? I mean, surely they can't just keep on creating more and more episodes forever, it has to end at some point. Well, today we'll be going over this issue and all the different factors involved, so let's get right into it. The first factor to look at is just how plausible it is for them to continue with more episodes and more seasons, since that is clearly very important. The thing with SpongeBob is that each episode is its own thing, and they often aren't connected apart from the occasional flashback. Each episode has its own story, and everything gets reset in the next episode, and this basically allows for there to be an infinite number of episodes, as there isn't any sort of risk of stretching a story out for too long or trying to find a way to end the show. That is the biggest difference between cartoons that have a tough time lasting for a long time versus ones that can go on for a long time. The most extreme example I can think of is Steven Universe, as that cartoon had arguably the most complex and in-depth storyline of any kid's cartoon, and each episode was significant in the progression of the story. However, because of this, the show had to end at some point, so it lasted a total of 5 seasons over a period of about 5 years, and that is one of the most successful examples of a strong story-based cartoon. On the other hand, SpongeBob doesn't have any sort of story that it needs to finish, so it could really just go on forever. And one other thing that really helps with this is just the fact that the characters tend to stay the same and have the same character traits in each episode, and this makes the cartoon very easy to just watch at any time because everything is very recognizable. In story-based cartoons, if you skip a couple episodes, it can be really hard to try and follow along, as there may be new characters or certain events that you don't understand. It's kind of like skipping a major cutscene in a game where everything just looks completely different. However, with SpongeBob, that isn't the case, and you can literally skip a whole season of the show and pick right back up with new episodes, and everything would be pretty much the same when it came to the setting and characters. However, something else to consider is with the audience, since there is a chance they could get bored after just watching the same characters in the same place for so many years. Well, one thing that SpongeBob does well is just having special episodes and special characters that come in every now and again that really can make the cartoon more interesting. For example, sometimes you'll have Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy come through, or sometimes they'll go on an adventure away from Bikini Bottom, and in my opinion, episodes like that are what helps make the show not too repetitive and gives people something to look forward to. And in the future, they can always add a special character every now and again that comes in, and there is still so many more places that they can explore that I really doubt they will run out of new things to do anytime in the near future. Plus, another thing to look at is just the mass appeal of the show, since that is like the #1 thing that has made it so popular. SpongeBob appeals to young kids and even adults, since the show is innocent enough for kids of any age to enjoy, but there are certain moments and some more mature jokes thrown in there to also make it enjoyable for adults to watch. This means that someone who grew up watching SpongeBob can still watch the show when they are adults and actually enjoy it, which is something you don't see with other cartoons like Paw Patrol, as that is way too kid-focused. This has definitely helped SpongeBob retain a lot of its viewers for so much longer than the average cartoon. Plus, it has also been translated and distributed to a ton of other languages and countries, which gives it a very worldwide appeal since anyone can really understand and enjoy the show. However, there is one issue when it comes to this, and that is with the fact that birth rates have been decreasing worldwide, and they are at the lowest since they first started being recorded, and about 20% lower since the first SpongeBob episode came out. Now, there are a lot of different factors at play here, and you still have to take into account that the world population overall has grown by about 2 billion since the first SpongeBob episode, and the population is still growing, but just at a slower pace than before. And it would still take quite a bit of time for any of these numbers to decline to a significant level that it would affect the viewership for SpongeBob, so in the near future, the declining birth rates isn't exactly an issue when it comes to getting new viewers. But another thing we need to look at is profitability, because at the end of the day, SpongeBob is run by a corporation and they want to make as much money as possible. It is one of the most profitable shows for Nickelodeon when it comes to just the ad revenue generated from airing the show. However, more importantly, they make billions and billions of dollars from a bunch of other things tied to SpongeBob. The main source is just from clothes and toys and just other types of SpongeBob related merch, and as of 2017, they had made over $13 billion in sales. But then you also have the movies, and more recently we have been seeing a lot more collabs and partnerships that are being done with SpongeBob. The most notable one, in my opinion, would have been the Brawl Stars collab they did a few months ago, as that was pretty big and it definitely brought in a lot of money for Brawl Stars and SpongeBob. This means that SpongeBob overall is just bringing in a ton of money, and if I had to guess, I would say it brings in between $50 and $100 million a year in profit for Nickelodeon alone, which makes up a considerable part of their yearly revenue. This means that this cartoon is really a major part of the company, and one of the things it is most well known for, which means it is highly unlikely they are going to cut the show anytime soon, as that would really hurt the business. But let's just consider it happening for the purpose of this video. The big thing in this situation would have to be figuring out what could possibly replace the show, as it has been on the network for so long, and they would need another show to take the spot, and the replacement show would most likely have to try and fit a lot of the viewership criteria that SpongeBob fit, which was basically young kids to adults. SpongeBob was just such a unique and groundbreaking cartoon that I honestly don't know if there is anything that could compete with it and perform the same or even better. There was a show that had tried to copy the flow and fundamentals of SpongeBob called Coconut Fred's Fruit Salad Island, which was produced by Warner Bros. However, this ended up being a massive failure because people hated how it was basically trying to copy SpongeBob, and it also just did a bad job at it because it felt super unauthentic. This led to a ton of hate, and that is why that show got canceled, and there hasn't really been any other attempt at trying to copy SpongeBob that has gotten big in any way. And I really don't think there is any other show that can exactly compete with SpongeBob on a global scale. There was The Loud House, which had gotten pretty big and something that I had enjoyed watching, but it wasn't really that big outside of America and didn't have the same global appeal that SpongeBob did. So unless Nickelodeon can come up with a brand new cartoon that somehow can become bigger than SpongeBob, I really doubt it would ever be replaced by anything. So overall, we have gone over a couple of different factors that all say that SpongeBob isn't ending anytime soon. However, we still need to see just how much longer it can go on for. As of right now, one of the oldest cartoons in the world is Mickey Mouse, which is over a century old and what really helped start the whole industry. And they announced that they are coming out with another show this year, which is just insane. This means that SpongeBob also has the potential to run for over 100 years, and that is just really crazy to think about coming from the point of view of someone who grew up watching the show. And SpongeBob would be even bigger than Mickey Mouse because it appeals to a bigger audience, and I really think SpongeBob still has so much more to offer. Overall, I believe it can run for over 100 years from now,